ranks, and actually one of those is the Australian Gene Bates. He rode for Zalf before turning professional. He's now team director at Bike Exchange Jayco.
I was going to say, that's a name, a blast from the past, isn't it? That's a tremendous effort. And he's been sports director for a long time as well, hasn't he? Best part of decade and a half, maybe? Ever since the team started, just before the team started. There's a big connection, isn't there, in Australian cycling with the north of Italy, Robbie?
Yeah, there is. The national road team, as it was then, the under-23 program, they came across under the guidance of Shane Bannon and Brian Stevens, and a lot of the Aussie pros that we talk about now, amongst others, Jai Hindley, Caleb Ewan as well. They've all made their way into the pros via a lot of racing and being based in northern Italy.
Here come the riders up the hill in northern Italy. We've seen an Australian at the front for Lotto, haven't we, for a while? Sweeney's been doing a bit of work. He's been well positioned. See, there's Jules Jensen up there. Ulisi staying nice and close to the front for UAE Emirates. And here comes Lipnic now, who's the Latvian champion. He's riding for Trek Segafredo. Segafredo made a brand new signing yesterday. Nathaniel Tesfazion, the latest rider to move up from Drono per Androni Giocattoli to the World Tour. Final sighting for this race then for the crowd at the top of La Rosina. Riders will now head back to Bassano del Grappa, finish line town, before beginning the new laps. And look at all those white and red jerseys at the front. UAE Emirates are controlling things here.
It was just a little acceleration about Andreas Kron, but it was just to try and get to his team Soigneur to take a bidon. So I thought we were going to get an attack, but then he just dropped his way back in, signalled his way out to the right, grabbed a drink. So back to normal programming on the front, and Bike Exchange Jayco getting involved. Chris Jules Jensen along with the UAE team, Trek Segafredo. So the big World Tour teams imposing their will. The gap under 2 minutes now with 55 kilometres to go, and we're all going to start thinking about the next phase now as they leave this circuit of La Rosina and head to Latisa, and all thinking about getting in position over that long drag and the steep downhill and into the bottom of that stone paved wall that they're going to hit.
Now keep looking down and back of that peloton as we see the three remaining riders in the leader, and looking for Vincenzo Nibali in an Astana Kazakhstan jersey. But of course the post-Nibali era began on Wednesday, and the post-Nibali era for Nibali started yesterday, by the way, on the island of Elba. He rode his first mountain bike race since retiring as a road professional, came 9th. He's talked about wanting to race on the mountain bike and maybe go and do the Cape Epic, which I know a few riders have done in the year after road retirement. Joaquim Purito Rodriguez was one of those recently. Yeah, Nibali yesterday racing on the island of Elba, up against some top mountain bikers, some of the best in the world. In fact, the European champion was there.
Yeah, people shouldn't underestimate what it takes to run a top 10 in a race like that on the mountain bike, especially when you're just coming straight off the road without a lot of preparation for something that's so specific. But talking of the Cape Epic, I've actually been there a couple of times, Rob, and worked on the commentary. And a few years back, I got asked if I'd like to ride it, and I said, "Oh, I'll have a look at that. I'll think about it. Sounds good." And I checked it out, and I said, "Thanks, but no thanks. It looks a bit too hard." And there's been a number of ex-road professionals who've gone over and ridden. A couple of years ago, as you said, Joaquin Rodriguez rode it, and it's a two-man or two-woman team event, or even, in fact, even a mixed team event. But George Hincapie and Christian Valdevelde rode it as well. And I'd catch up with them on a daily basis, and I said, "Oh no, what have we got ourselves into? This is so ridiculously hard." George said it was less hard than the year that he rode it with Cadell Evans, when they won the 40-plus Masters division.
Wow. Back to 4 at the front as Abrahamsen returns. He's the rider wearing 133 here, 27-year-old from Norway. Get to win a pro bike race. His second Italian race of this sort of end-of-season run. And back behind, still Christian Jensen, alongside Alessandro Corvi, working just to keep things in check. A couple more bike exchange riders move to join the Danish rider who was schooled in Ireland, Jules Jensen. And Davide De Preto comes up to join him, young Italian.
And it does look like they're rallying around Coglioni. He was the man who sort of slotted into the wheels while the rest made their way to the front to contribute to the chase or the pace-making on the front. So Coglioni looks to be the man that they're all riding for today.
We were talking about riders from Zalvers. We see Rebellin just sitting there taking a drink on the left-hand side. He's the most visible today that he has been in these recent races. Maybe one final attempt to try and do something towards the end of the race. And in this company, it really would take a miracle. But he's still in the bunch. Yeah, we were talking about Zalf a minute ago and riders going to the top level with Australian teams. Davide De Preto, former Zalf rider, moving up to the top level with Bike Exchange.
And that's what we've started to see with, well, for an example is young Australian riders. Their under-23 program is no more, unfortunately, so a whole national team setup is not run like it used to be anymore. But what they have managed to do is create such a presence and reputation in Europe and particularly in Italy that there's a number of teams prepared to take young Australian riders. They take them on advice of the high performance program coaches from Australia, and on behalf of Shane Bannon, Brian Stevens, have always been heavily involved with those young riders and in the scene in Italy. So you get a lot of riders who are getting spots on these really well organised and high profile amateur teams in Italy, and that's how they're making their way through to the professional ranks.
And here many of them are, and the final race in Europe as the road season ends for 2022. Just over 50 kilometres remain. Just shy of 2 minutes is the gap. And this is Niels Brunn, racing for Tudor Pro Cycling, just 22 years of age. Had some nice experience this year in pro races like Tour de Romandie, the national team. And the Tour de l'Avenir, of course, down that mix of racing under 23 level and pro racing as well, that is sort of becoming the norm too when you look at the whole scene in general. Professionals winning things younger and younger nowadays. We've seen stunning effect, hasn't we, in races like the Tour de France in the last few years. Bassano del Grappa is approaching. Peloton approaching it, just 1:55 behind these 4 riders in the front. Remember, there were 5. Riccardo Tosin, the first to be dropped. Abrahamsen, who's there in the yellow and red back again, shelled on the climb. Final of the 3 ascents of La Rosina. But it's to Latisa they go next. And then one final climb at what's being called the Diesel Farm. Wait to see what that entails. Again, we think the sponsors are perhaps heavily named with that one. given a
I
few
didn't know
of
you
the
could farm diesel, but there you go.
Neither did I. Certainly the clothing type. I've seen quite a few sweaters with the brand across the front amongst the organisers today. And it's fitting, isn't it? This is a Filippo Pozzato race. Of course he's got to have designer clothing for all the volunteers and workers on the event. It wouldn't be a Pozzato race without that.
But probably a few man bags around as well. Well, off to the climb of Latiza next. Rob, 330 metres. The height difference from bottom to top is 50 metres. It's got a maximum gradient of 20% and an average of just over 15%. So it is a wall.
Oh, we've seen a few Flemish flags around, haven't we? A line of Flanders was being waved a moment ago, so it's sort of a fast forward to spring, and it'll be here before you all know it.
There's a familiar face. Well, what you can see of it, Geoffroy Soup, the man with the beard from Total Energie, experienced Frenchman, and doing his bit. And, well, looking at their team list for this afternoon, I would think that Alexis Villemors might be their best hope, the 34-year-old Frenchman. He's been a winner of stage in the Tour de France. Yep, he's riding quite well. Remember his stage victory in the Tour, I think it was 2015 when he won on the Mur de Bretagne. He jumped away on the steeper section and held everybody off. So this is a sort of parcours that could really suit him as well.
He's ridden an entirely Italian programme, really, since the start of September. Ridden all of the semi-classics and, of course, the Giro di Lombardia as well. Podium place in Gran Piemonte just a couple of days before the Giro di Lombardia. A race that ended up in that very strange sprint that was won by Ivan Garcia Cortina. And the company he was in, that was a sensational result, really, for Guillermo, not known for his bunch sprinting capabilities.
Yeah, not slow, but not a man for the big bunch sprints. And of course, on that day, won by Cortina, who has acquitted himself well amongst the best of the best sprinters. But it was quite a thinned out bunch. They got rid of some of the real fast men, and it was a bit of a race of attrition with the puncheurs left over.
You're looking down on Marostica here. The old industrial heritage still on show, plus the even older heritage, the walls of the city. Peloton flying past. Giorlo still going. This now is Belleri. Minute 50, they're holding fairly well right now, but of course these climbs to come. First rider to be caught again, Riccardo Tosin. Reabsorbed by what's left of this peloton. Started out with the small bunch anyway, 112 riders today, just a few, remember. We're told that Alessandro De Marchi has climbed off. There's the Astana Kazakhstan team on the right hand side. Won this race last year with Samuele Battistella. Got a couple of interesting riders to look out for today, the likes of Simone Velasco, Miguel Angel Lopez, of course. Always aggressive even when it's not really his terrain, and imagine he'll be trying something. He's been doing all the gravel racing as well in the last few weeks.
He was the first attacker in the Gravel World Championship.
He was, up the first hill, wasn't he?
A week ago.
He wasted no time. Interesting to know where his career goes from here.
He's quite the enigma, isn't he, Miguel Angel Lopez?
By the way, if you're still wondering about the exit and Movistar and all that last year, the brand new series of the Movistar documentary has been out on Netflix recently. If you want to watch that, make sure you can, because that is quite the watch. Very, very revealing indeed.
Yeah, it is a good watch. I mean, I started watching it in August when I actually got home from overseas off the back of 2 Grand Tours back to back, and I got home and I started watching a cycling documentary. It was really interesting. Even when you have been in a professional team and you know what goes on behind the scenes and all the machinations of a pro team, but to watch that and how they went through the season and the different personalities and the ups and downs, and it was a really interesting watch. I liked it.
On to Latiza circuit we come. And this is the circuit that's 12 kilometres long, again to be taken on 3 occasions before we go and take on our final climb up the diesel farm. And as you can see, it's not just on the cobbled climb itself where things happen. We've got up and down road. There's almost 3,000 metres of climbing across the roads today.
Yeah, it's the climb before the climb. We talk about Latiza, the 330 metre paved wall that they're going to take on and they have to tackle, but this section here is quite the climb in itself, although it's not categorised. We don't have all the information on it in terms of profile, but it certainly drags up for a couple of kilometres before they dive down onto the foot of the stones.
And it's still the man who's leading the King of the Mountains competition, Belleri, who's pulling things along at the front for the BS Carrera team. This race behind those heating up. 1:37 now. Shaved another 15 seconds of it. You can see why. They're just racing. It's not quite the hugely aggressive Flemish racing sort of thing for every corner, but there was a little hint of that there, Robbie, wasn't there? Just for that right-hand corner.
Yeah, a little hint of it you see as they spear into that corner and then heavy on the brakes further back in the peloton and almost to a standstill. But it's the warm-up for when it really counts, when they get over the top of this hill, tackle the descent, and then onto that incredibly narrow cobbled road. And that's where we're going to see a real rush to be in position. But the strongest will come to the fore when you've got a drag like they have before you dive down to the climb. It's a lot easier for the strongest riders to get in position. Less luck involved. You just ride a bit harder on the climb and find yourself in the right spot.
Here's that big race into it. Abramson just retakes it up at the front. Zurlo sitting at the back here. He's one of the 3 breakaway survivors on Wednesday at the Giro del Veneto and went on to fight for the race. Won in the end by Matteo Trentin. Really aggressive races. Most of these Italian semi-classics are towards the end of the year. Bunch continues to fight for those positions. Roads narrow, they widen left and right, up and down. 1.5 minutes now, and just over 44 kilometres to the conclusion of the final European road race of the season. And whilst we've got you here, a reminder that there's a couple of days racing still to go on the Tour of Langkawi, the last stage race of the season. You can see those live or on demand on GCN Plus and Discovery Plus. Also, today's the final day of the Track World Championships. If you've missed any of that, you can catch up on demand. A reminder that tomorrow on our subscriber platforms and free on the GCN Racing YouTube channel, you have the Giro d'Italia presentation. We'll know the first Grand Tour route of the season before you can forget about road racing for a couple of months. But the cyclocross is on. We've got the UCI Champions League track coming up. There's plenty to entertain you for the next 2 or 3 months before we return with the road racing. Bit of looking around here from Belleri. You can see all the police motorbikes screaming past him, of course, with the very narrow stuff that's coming. And you never know what might happen behind, how quickly this can come together. Organisers will be wanting to make sure that most of the traffic's out the way.
Yeah, Rob, I think even we usually see when they have about 30 seconds we see all the vehicles come out, but I think it'd be a lot safer if when it gets to a minute they have a mass exodus from behind all those race vehicles, because it's going to happen so quickly as this peloton's going to be really turning up the heat on the race towards that climb of Latiza. As we see, the pace is already on. We talked about the strongest riders just by default being in the best position because they can just ride harder on the climb. We're seeing riders go out the back of this peloton under the impetus of UAE, and they're really winding up the pace with Formolo.
Yeah, Formolo at the front. Just sitting behind him was Matteo Trentin. And the pace being put on the front now being reflected in the gap. 1:26 continues to fall.
Well, for obvious reasons, we talk a lot about Matteo Trentin. He's coming off the back of the win of the Giro del Trentino. Veneto, my excuses. But another man in that team who always seems to get under the radar and just sort of do his own thing is Diego Ulissi. He's always there, and he played a big role in the win of Trentin as well when the group split. And he's a guy, he rides a bit like a sniper. He's always there and thereabouts. You sort of don't see him as they hit the bottom of this climb, and look at those stones.
On to Latiza, 330 metres long. You can see average gradient at 15%. Yes, average gradient at 15%, maximum at 20%. Another rider shelled, and that is Abrahamsson for the second time.
And just in case you're wondering, you've just tuned in, no, we are not in Belgium. We're in the Veneto region of Italy, but this race organised by Filippo Pozzato, he has found a hill that, harks back to his love of the Flemish classics.
Here is the race into the Koppenberg. Latiza. As the first few riders hit it at the bottom, and look at what's happened to the gap. Just 20 seconds disappearing into thin air like that. And it's
Mark Hirschi here on the front, along with Formolo, Matteo Trentin, and ladies and gentlemen, this is not a teaser. This is the real thing.
It certainly is, and everyone's fighting to be at the front. See the different climbing styles, and just look, it's under the trees there. You can imagine that this time of year the dew's going to be under. It's going to be slightly damp on those cobbles as well. Not easy as they come off of the cobbles onto the gravel very briefly. At the top of Latiza we have two left at the front of the race, but look what's happened to the gap.
It's dropping all the time. I was about to say 29, and then it was 25. And the pressure just continues to be applied by UAE, and this is really going to split the peloton.
You can just see, in fact, instead of the two riders we saw, there was one rider further ahead, and that was Matteo Zurlo, who seemed to have made the move over the top. This now is Formolo. Trentin can follow. Lopez is trying to do the same, third wheel behind, and a couple of other Astana jerseys follow him.
Trentin with a little look over the shoulder, and he continues to try and pedal his way across to his teammate. Well, they've picked up the man from Uno X. That's Abrahamsson, dropped out of that breakaway, and that now for the last time. It just tacks onto the back of Formolo. So there's going to be two from UAE, two from Astana. So Lopez, and who's the other one going to be? Another little group coming across as well.
And imagine they've got to do that 3 times as well. So 3 circuits of Latiza. Formolo's pushing on here. This is sort of the carbon cutout, isn't it, of what UAE Emirates have been doing in each and every one of these semi-classics in northern Italy. Amassing their bodies at the front, breaking up the race nice and early, and making sure it's really aggressive. And there aren't too many survivors at the end of it.
No, it's how they started the season as well with the Italian semi-classics. Right at the beginning of the season, they were doing exactly the same thing, massing at the front, splitting the race to pieces, going to the finish with actually sometimes just 3 of them and taking the complete podium.
Well, Lopez has company with one teammate. There was the man they call Roccia, who is Formolo on his wheel, and now the rest of the bunch returns. These two trying to make it up to Zurlo, and we will have 3 together at the front again, but their gap will be less than half a minute. Absolutely destroyed on that first passage of Latiza. Not too much opportunity to sort of gather your thoughts and regain yourself here. It's only 12 kilometres long, this circuit. And once you've got one passage out the way, you're on the descent. You're already approaching the next one. Battle of mere survival here. One that they're not really winning. That's no surprise. There's another car, gets pulled out the gap. 18 seconds. Zurlo in the green there, and red and white. In the white you can see Belleri, and then Niels Brun, who's in the black here. Yet to get a good view of the peloton from up on high to see exactly how much it's been thinned down, but I'd be very surprised now, Robbie, if it was anywhere near as big as what we saw approaching that last climb.
Yeah, well, when you just saw them coming into the climb, I was thinking something around 20. It looks more like 30 riders with a few more coming across. So a lot of riders scrambling to get themselves back on terms. But, I mean, this just after one climb of Latisa, and there'll be a few who are at the end of their tether. They've used the best of their forces just to get into this front group now. So with another 2 climbs over that cobbled section, it's just going to thin out even more, and we'll start to figure out who's got the numbers in the group, apart from UAE and Astana, to really make something of that and start to make this race tactical, start throwing out some attacks, maybe even in between climbs.
You can see at least 3 riders from Astana. There's one from Eolo Cometa in there, and then remaining there for Alpecin de Koning was Nicola Conci, who was involved in the shake-up the other day, the Italian for the Belgian team. 9 seconds. Another motorbike whizzes past, and there's a nasty, disappointed look behind there from Zurlo.
Well, it was a matter of time, but maybe that time has come a little bit earlier than they anticipated themselves. I mean, the pace went on so hard by UAE, led by Davide Formolo, and it was still over a minute near the top of the climb before they took that descent and onto the climb of Latisa. It just melted so quickly with that violent acceleration.
So Ulisi, Trentin, Formolo still at the front for UAE. Looking around, and Goldstein remains for Israel Premier Tech. Gavazzi is there for Eolo Cometa, as is Samuel Erivi.
2 riders there from Bike Exchange Jayco. Plenty of looking around. Everyone's sort of thinking to themselves, well, I've made the group, I've made the important split. There's a massive gap back to the rest of the field, and no reason to ride on this section of road just yet. I mean, the brake's just hovering only just in front at 7 seconds, and everyone seemed content to just leave it up to UAE.
I just spotted a man from your neck of the woods. Jay Vine up there, and not far away from the front for Alpecin de Koning.
It's good to see him finishing the season off strongly with a lot of motivation after that massive disappointment crashing out of La Vuelta when he looked set to win the King of the Mountains jersey. He had his hands full with Richard Carapaz, of course, but Vine, he'd been looking so strong. Of course, winning 2 mountaintop finishes, but he sustained a pretty nasty cut to his arm and a damaged wrist, but he's bounced back strongly and is finishing off the season well.
Still part of the group chasing this trio. Trio being led by 24-year-old Matteo Zurlo. Flicks his elbow. That means Michael Balleri comes through. Niels Brun, the only non-Italian in this trio, is there in the black jersey for the Tudor team.
And Brun showing the signs of a little tumble somewhere, I'd imagine, the last few days, possibly in the gravel race a couple of days ago, if he also started that alongside his teammate Robin Froidevoix, who was the winner of the Serenissima gravel race. Haven't spotted him so far today, so maybe either the hills a little bit too much, or maybe the effects of winning that gravel race a couple of days ago still hanging in the legs of the young Swiss, just 23 years old.
It would be easy enough to spot from here, wouldn't he, more or less, because he's got the national champions jersey on, the red jersey with a white cross on the front, and he's certainly not amongst the first 20-30 riders there. So the breakaway's done. 37 kilometres remain. Alpecin de Koning moved to the front. UAE Emirates have a rider in there. There's presence too from Israel Premier Tech, from Astana, Kazakhstan. And I wonder if Nathanael Tesfatsion can do something to leave a parting gift for Gianni Savio and Dronoper. He's sitting in about 6th to 7th wheel. One long line here. Alpecin de Koning making it difficult. We saw Vine moving to the front. Aha! Lippens is still in there, isn't he, for Israel Premier, for Trek Segafredo, pardon me. Conchi sits a bit further down for Alpecin.
Well, there is Tesfatsion sitting in about 5th wheel. 6th actually.
Here's Formolo. Just behind him, Christian Sgaroni.
Sepp van Mark put himself in the third wheel at the moment.
It's good to see Van Marke racing towards the end of the year. Vine's just going to go into sit into about 5th place again in the blue jersey. Opportunity for the entire UAE team to move up now, and they've got 5 riders still towards the front here.
Haven't seen much of Sepp van Mark since his victory in the Maryland Classic. What was that, around a month ago now? We won that from a break, a small sprint of about 5 riders.
Marco just sitting behind Davide Formolo there, and next to Natnel Tesfazion. There's Enrico Battaglin over on the left-hand side, sitting in about 5th place, purple jersey. And Alexis Vouillamont moved up into about 10th place. And this now, yet again, is Alessandro Corvi. What a season he's had. He christened it, what was it, the Passo Fejaya back in the day? He was the winner on that day.
The Fejaya. Yeah, he was the forgotten man of the day a little bit, unfortunately, for Corvi. I mean, not for himself and his team, his family, his fans, and for followers of the Giro. But of course, it was the day where Jai Hindley rode himself into the pink jersey and dropped Richard Carapaz.
It was the day that
Corvi was up the road winning the stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dave Zulo at the back after being absorbed, just trying to hang on. But it's a big task in itself after giving everything. Cofidis have Eddie Finet there in the red and white jersey. And this is all that's left of the race. 35 kilometres to go, heading to the second ascent up Latiza. What's the sort of order of the day for this next ascent? More of the same, whittle it down a bit more, or are we going to see maybe an attack to really split it?
Well, just seeing the nature of the roads on this lap, they're relatively flat apart from the approach to the climb and the climb itself. The rest is really flat. I'm not sure you'd want to go with too far to go, so be in control. Make sure you don't miss a split. Make sure you're always in the front part of that peloton. But I think that maybe the last time over Latiza would be the time to really go full gas. And once you're over the top, commit 100% and go into that final sort of 20 kilometres of the race, really ripping things apart. Long range one from here, but a danger to go with so much flat road around this circuit, around sort of 9 kilometres on the flat, and there's still quite a few teams with numbers in this group. So I think maybe better, and could be the thinking with this many riders from UAE, to just sort of hold the status quo for another lap before really ripping into it.
Italian champion Filippo Zana still in the group as well. National jersey on his back. Had a real breakthrough year as the man who's been around for a while. We've seen him riding 3 different Giri d'Italia. Not too much apart from the odd breakaway, but this year's had a fantastic race, a fantastic season, hasn't he? Won the national title on that one day down in the south of Italy, and of course was the GC winner at the Adriatica Ionica race. 23 years of age and heading for the World Tour for the next 3 seasons.
So the tactic here for UAE could be just quite like they did on the last time around. Just hold that front position, a ride a strong pace on this drag up before they hit that sharp descent. And if you can put yourself on the front and leading onto that cobbled climb, everybody's got to ride hard up it. But if you're in the front, ride hard, you put everybody under pressure, you can split things. Over the top, you can choose what you do, then everybody's going into the red, scrambling, trying to get back. So just being at the front, by default, you're going to do a lot of damage.
Eolo Cometa trying to do a little bit of damage here. Haven't had an amazing season in terms of wins, have they? Just 3 wins all year.
Oops.
Now then, problems on the left-hand side, and a rider down. I wonder if that was Miguel Angel Lopez. I think it was, because the Astana Kazakhstan riders are waiting. Yep. Oh dear.
Yeah, well, you've seen the fight for position as they came up that climb. They're trying to hit the descent at the front, as UAE's now come back to the front and taken control again from Eole Kometa. Is it, well, not a replay of the crash, at the same pitch we saw just before. And you can just imagine that, you know, as they came into that corner, the squeeze goes on, a touch of wheels, maybe a locking up of handlebars, and down you go. So day done for Lopez, if in fact that was him, and we assume it is with the number of teammates who are waiting for him.
The very brief shot of his face, it seemed to be him as well. I would certainly put an educated guess down. Again, the presence of the two teammates tells you a lot, doesn't it? Miguel Angel Lopez crashing in the Veneto Classic.
And it split the bunch too, that. I mean, the touch of brakes, the swerving to get it around that fallen rider. And there's probably at least a dozen riders gone off the back of this group, as they're really in that now fight into these really narrow roads and onto the bottom of the cobble climb, and here it comes.
And it's Matteo Trentin who is leading in there. You can see Mark Hirschi's just behind him, then Diego Ulissi. You've also got Davide Formolo, 4 riders of the 5 we had until a moment ago. Corvi was the other. And Andersen is the young Dane who'd done plenty of work so far until now.
Wants a bit of room, Trentin, waving the motorbike forward. So I'm going to descend faster than you can. So you're going to have to give me a little bit of room. In fact, they're not yet onto the cobble climb. My mistake. Still a little bit of descending to go before they swing onto the stones for the second time on Letiza. Maximum gradient, 20%.
And look at that, no wonder everybody was fighting for that position there, because you're going to go onto it first here, have that opportunity, and look at how long and strung out. It just shows the importance of the positioning into the bottom of it, Robbie.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're halfway in the bunch, you're already 12 seconds behind the front of the race. So it's a free head start if you're able to get the position over that drag uphill that they've just done. Use it to your advantage on the descent. Those motorbikes are getting in the way of Matteo Trentin, trying to push things along, string things out, and this is the sort of acceleration that is the prelude to splitting the bunch once they get onto the stones. It makes it really quite easy when you're already taking 12-15 seconds on a strung out peloton. It doesn't take much for it to split further, come over the top, and you've got the rest of the peloton at 6s and 7s.
Here's the back of what's left of the peloton.
It was interesting to see Trentin, the man, being the one to do the riding on the front. Okay, it was mostly downhill where he was riding, but if they were riding for Matteo Trentin, you would expect they're going to be having him sit behind and getting blocked again a little bit by that moto as they're back onto Letiza for the second time. Van Marke coming through, third position. Yep.
Sepp Van Marke just behind, and it's Trentin who again just, I think, had to brake there a little with the motorbike just in his way.
Hirschi with him.
This is Letiza. Remember, just 330 metres long. Here's the vital stats for your maximum gradient. 20%, average at 15%. And
is that Jay Vine coming through? No.
Vine and Conchi, I think. Vine just
Conchi is So the first Alpecin Koenig rider is Conchi, but Jay Vine is there. But Conchi looking really comfortable on the stones. Good technique. Front wheel just bouncing a little bit. Nice and controlled but soft grip on the bars. That's essential when you're on the stones. Let the front wheel of the bike just play its way across the stones. Don't grip it and rip it too hard. Just let it do what it needs to do. Steer your way across.
There's one rider in there from the 3rd Division team who's having a fantastic race, I think. The General Store team, green jersey up there. As we see riders from Alpecin Koenig. Now Oldani's up there with Conchi this time. This is Conchi at the front. Oldani sits in 3rd wheel. We know that Vine had been up there, but it is Stefano Oldani now who's up there in 3rd place. Of course, stage winner in the Giro d'Italia in Genoa this year. I'll look around to see the latest bit of damage done and communication. Trentin communicating damage, and it looks as though there's an issue for the rider wearing number 122, who's Paul Ursula. Mechanical or legs, or both. Liebensch out at the back now. 76 for Albacete Koenig is Jimmy Janssens.
Job done for Janssens, and they've got two riders up the front there, as you said, Konci and Oldani, and going through, contributing to the pace setting on the front. Plenty of riders from UAE. I think they're still there with at least 3, possibly 4 riders. Now there you go, 3 in the first 6 at the moment. Makes sense when you saw the way they came onto the climb, stringing things out in the descent, and they almost had half the bunch dropped before they even hit the stones. That's Mark Hirschi, the third of them. Formula number 4, he's the man in third position.
Matthias Vacek is up there for Trek Segafredo. What if you remember him from the start of the season, weren't you? And that race when he was racing for the then Gazprom team in the UAE Tour, he won from the breakaway. Just 20 years of age. Signed for Trek Segafredo now, and he's performing very admirably up the front.
Yeah, great to see him picked up by Trek Segafredo after winning that stage in UAE, and then as we know, everything that happened with Russian sports people and teams being shut out, and of course Vacek was a member of that Russian Gazprom team, but he's from the Czech Republic.
Now then, I mentioned there was a rider in the green jersey there for the General Store SGB team. He's a 19-year-old and he's riding on the home roads. I'm talking about young Francesco Busato there on the left-hand side, the centre of your picture. He is in esteemed company. He's about to turn professional with the Intermarché team next year. Again, 19, and this race finishes in his hometown. Now, what a story that would be. Versano del Grappa he's from. The other week he was riding the under-23 version of the Giro di Lombardia, the Piccolo Lombardia, where he came 5th. He's been riding the under-23 Giro this year, where he got a couple of stage podiums. This, though, is a different level. This is the different game. This is one of the performances of his young career so far, just to be in this company.
Yeah, great to see a young rider like that, 19. Although we've become accustomed to 19, 20-year-olds winning plenty of races now in the World Tour, and in fact in Grand Tours. And but very good to see a young rider like that who's about to make his pro debut next year and already mixing it up with World Tour professionals in the final race of the season.
Now, a World Tour former professional is pulling this group that includes Davide Rebellin back to the front. Not a bad performance at 51 years of age to be in the second chasing group as the race goes into its finale here. The former World Tour professional I was talking about was Andrea Garosio, racing for the third division Biese Carrera right now. Here's the man in the white jersey trying to bring this back together. And the man riding at the front here on the radio, the 19-year-old on home roads, about to become a fully fledged pro next year on World Tour.
Yeah, if I was his team director, I'd be saying just settle down a little bit, stay calm in this group. There's a lot of riders here who should be taking more responsibility than yourself, so you can save your legs a little bit. Try and go under the radar despite riding in that iridescent green. Take a little bit of a back seat in the group, let the others take care of doing the work. He's there on his own from his team, of course. So lean on the bigger teams. There's 2 from Cofidis. Remy Rojas is the first man of those 2 here in second position. He was in the sprint for the win a couple of days ago in the
out of them here.
Yeah, it does. I mean, they've been taking control the entire race. They've had the pressure on, and they've been the team that's been splitting things up and dictating how this race is playing out. It depends how now they want to use these numbers, as we see now.